Jim Mora, head coach of UCLA football, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. Coach, what do you think is going on in Philadelphia right now?
Well, first of all, that was definitely Eskin. And he definitely, if he didn't have his mink on, he probably had like a really pretty pink tie and his poofed up hair. Mm-hmm. I love Howard. When my dad was with the Philadelphia Stars in the old USFL, which all your sidekicks there are way too young to remember, Howard was always around. What do I think's going on in Philly? I don't know. I think the mad genius is at work. What's the news on the running back? Anything yet?
I don't know. I mean,
was trying to find out.
Well, here's the deal, Jim. According to Albert Breer of NFL Media Group, Ryan Matthews, who is in the building with a contract that apparently was agreed to and hammered out yesterday, he is now no longer in the building. With DeMarco Murray winging his way there. Is there any way, shape, or form you think that Chip is just kicking the tires on DeMarco Murray and telling Ryan Matthews, we're going to sign you, but let's have this play out because it might cost Dallas some cap room? You think?
If typically when you go on a free agent visit, once you walk in the building, you're trying to get a deal done. And if you walk out of the building, you're not going to get a deal done. You know, you don't want to let a good player get out of the building unless you've got something else cooking. So I don't think Ryan is going to be a bargaining chip, at least in his mind, a pawn in this game. He's too good a player for that. So if he left without a contract being signed, then to me that's an indicator that DeMarco Murray is going to be an Eagle.
So, Jim, I mean, everybody has been saying that Chip has had a plan all along. Now, how does that work? That they sit down, coach, and whoever is part of the cognoscenti there in Philadelphia.
Right.
And they sit down and say, okay, we're going to trade LaShawn and we're going to get Kiko Alonso back, and that gives us cap space to go get player A, B, and C. Now let's go execute. And then is there a plan B in the drawer somewhere, or they are just spitballing if A, B, and C doesn't work out? Not
a lot of spitballing when you're talking about that kind of money and the stakes being so high. Typically, it's a plan that's been put in place, and you try to follow it as closely as you can, knowing that you might have to midstream adjust at times, but you don't really spitball it. And let's not kid ourselves, even though there was that 3-day window of negotiations, there's been a lot of back-channel talk between agents and decision-makers in the NFL, and certainly between teams with regards to trades. So usually this stuff is pretty well thought out and pretty well choreographed and typically moves according to plan. There's always going to be an unknown or something that just pops up out of nowhere, but you don't wing it at that level.
But the unknown,
guy like Chip doesn't wing it.
Yeah, I know. Well, the unknown and something pops up out of nowhere. Jim Mora usually isn't the leading rusher in the National Football League, as advocated by a quarterback that you just traded for in Sam Bradford.
Yeah,
that's what it appears to be. That Bradford starts whispering in everybody's ears, and Murray has not got a deal yet. Now suddenly he's on his way to Philadelphia.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. I think that is probably the one that just popped up, the DeMarco to the Eagles, but I'm sure there was something going on there beforehand. I'm sure there was, and they have a plan. And it's interesting. We'll see what happens. It's what makes it exciting and fun to watch, to see how these things play out. Like I said, most of the time, it's pretty well understood where a guy's going to end up, at least on the inner circles. We might not know it in the public as well as they know it inside, but like I said, there's back-channel stuff going on. There's negotiations taking place. There's interest being gauged all the time. And usually you kind of have a feel for who you're going to get and who you're not going to get and who you're going to have to compete for. But this one's interesting, and because, as I said, it's the leading rusher in the NFL, it makes it, and it's interconference rivals, it makes it all that much more exciting.
Now, we in the paparazzi and the media, Jim, always like to figure out that we know what people are thinking or what their thought process is. So I say that as the caveat to this question, that there's many people out there thinking that, yes, Chip Kelly wants to win, and he wants to win badly, and that's all he wants to do. But deep in the recesses of his coaching mind, he knows that if it doesn't work out at this level, he can always go back to where he was so wildly successful at the collegiate level, and that's always in the back pocket for him. So why not roll the dice on somebody like Bradford and Alonso, et cetera, et cetera? Is that a feasibility at all in the coaching brain, Jim?
No, we don't think like that. We don't think on the fallback. What's my fallback? I can't imagine. I mean, obviously Chip knows that if it didn't work out in the NFL, he'd be, the hottest name on the market in college football and would have his choice of jobs, and he'd be the kind of guy that people would, fire their current head coach to get. Hopefully he doesn't want to come to UCLA. But typically, coaches are so darn competitive. We don't think about our fallback plans, man. It's all about winning now and being great now and trying to achieve where you are. We don't think about the fallback, especially a guy like Chip, man. He doesn't think that way. He's going for it, man. He's going for it all the time. I don't think he's thinking about, I have a safety net. I just can't see that being part of his mental makeup.
Jim Mora, head coach of UCLA, joining me here on the phone. Your pro day just went down this week. What is that like from your perspective at the collegiate level, knowing exactly what the NFL minds who are wondering about coming into your building, your campus, Coach?
Well, it was great. It was a fun day, and our young men did very, very well. What's fun for me is to stand up in front of the scouts and coaches and decision makers that are there and kind of talk about our players. And what I have to always resist is giving my opinion of them as a player. When I would go, when I was on the other side of the table and doing evaluations, I appreciated hearing from the head coach in terms of what they thought of the kid's character and his toughness and whether he's trustworthy enough to consider drafting or not. But I wanted to make my own evaluation, and so I try to be cognizant of that when I talk to the scouts, and I talk about our players and their strengths and weaknesses as people, as workers, their work ethic, their character, their dependability, things like that. But I try not to get into, their ability to play the game. I think everyone's looking for something a little bit different, and I don't want to hurt someone's chances to get drafted by saying the wrong thing about them. It's really fun for me, Rich, to be on this side of it and see kids that you've worked with moving one step closer to achieving their dream. And I probably have told you this before, but I've been in probably, 27, 28, I don't know how many draft rooms, a lot of drafts. Mm-hmm. And that's exciting, because you're picking a player for your team. But it doesn't even compare to the feeling I've had the last 2 years and 3 coming up this year where players you've worked with get drafted. I mean, you get tears in your eyes. I'm not just saying that. You get goosebumps. You run around the house screaming and yelling. I remember when Dayton Jones got drafted my first year here, and just knowing that he was achieving his athletic dream and you had just even a small part in it was so friggin' cool. It was amazing.
Jim Mora here on the Rich Eisen Show, and now you also have a chance to evaluate the evaluator. Mm-hmm. Before I let you go, I have to ask you about Mike Mayock's choice of tartan shorts on the NFL Network coverage of UCLA Pro Day.
They were colorful. I said they were Chubbies. They actually were not true Chubbies. There is a brand called Chubbies. If you want to, you'd look good in Chubbies.
I don't think so, Jim. I'm just going to go out on that limb.
What we used to call Bermuda shorts, I think, is what we would call those, and they would look good on the golf course. I'm not sure that they look good on the NFL Network set, but it was awesome having Mike out there. We got to further our debate about Marcus and Jameis, and that was fun. I always appreciate his opinion because he works so hard at it. There's nobody that works as hard as he does at evaluating these players, and he has an objective opinion, and it's hard not to respect Mike just because he's so well versed in this game. And I loved hanging out with him. As a matter of fact, right after Brett worked out, I went to Mike and said, what'd you think? And he liked him. He liked him. I mean, he's never too effusive in his praise. Mike's reserved at this time of the year, but I just appreciated the fact that he was on our campus. I have so much respect for him. But we still disagree on the quarterback situation. Not to the point where we're going to have a knockdown, drag out, and I'm not going to hit a guy wearing shorts like that anyway.
No, I know that. I would call it a red flag, though, Jim. I'll be very honest. It's a red flag on the
It makes you wonder.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Jim, thanks for joining. I appreciate it.
Okay, Rich.
You bet. That's Jim Mora, UCLA head coach.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.